We're back with full adapter again, and we're working on this 4-track motor, 3-track 4 motor.
No, 300 4-tracks.
300 4-track motor.
We're gonna be taking it apart. I got a video I'll leave in the link over here, I think, for the removal of this motor, and we're gonna be tearing it down today. So first, start off with, we're going to take the valve covers off here, and I'm not sure what I guess we'll start taking these head bolts out. Valve covers and this oil tube, 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter valve covers, and the all of these bolts out of the head. So we'll start pulling those off and cut the camera back on right before we pull the head off.
Bye.
Okay.
Go.
What's up, guys? We're back again. Got the bolts loosened up here on the head. I just wanted to show you which ones we had to loosen up. My videographer here is trying to get a drone shot, and we don't have a drone. So there's a number of 10 millimeter bolts as well as 8 millimeter headed ones. 2 10s here, 10 here. We got an 8 here. This thing's actually missing 2 bolts here, so we're gonna have to figure out what's going on with those. Take those out. These here, these are super long. That one actually broke the threads off, so I'm gonna have to extract that once we get everything out of there. And then these here too. Sorry for that nasally sound. Ricker's over here trying to blow his nose. So I'm gonna pull these off, and then what you do is you can take a hammer and just tap under the edge of this thing. I thought it had a little pry point, but it doesn't. Take a screwdriver and pry up under here, tap it, and it'll come right off. Get all these bolts out and put them in the cardboard, and then I'll cut the camera back on right before I pop it off.
Okay, bye guys.
Alright guys, we got the all the bolts out. Now Riker's going to show you how to pop this thing off. Just got a screwdriver kind of wedged under there. Just tap it a little bit with the hammer like that, and then it comes off. You can see it breaking loose there. You got to kind of pick it up on this side too. Lift it up. It's got a little dowel pin, and there you go. The top of the, or the, I guess that's not really the head. This is actually the rocker arms in here is off, and this exposes the cam. I didn't mess with putting this thing at top dead center, but I guess while we got it tore down like this, I can show you. I really don't. It really doesn't matter, because we're going to end up completely tearing this one down and putting it back together. And actually, I should have said it earlier on this bike, but there's nothing wrong with this motor, but it had a stripped out oil drain plug, and the boys tried all kind of stuff to fix it, and it's still leaking. He ended up putting a rubber expansion plug in there, and he can't get it out, so you can't change the oil in it and all that. So we're ended up picking up a case off of eBay, fairly cheap, used, and we're just swapping the case out here. Probably gonna end up doing a set of rings in it just to freshen the top end up, but that's what we're doing here on this bike. Alright, so to set this thing at top dead center, you need to take the, there's 2 plugs here in the side. Let's see if I can get down there to them. Right here, this is a 4-wheel drive model. The 2-wheel drive model just has a plug in here that you turn the crankshaft with. Since this one's 4-wheel drive and this shaft's in the way, you have to take these 2 plugs out. And you just take a big screwdriver and screw these plugs out. Riker's going to show you how to do it. That's the wrong way. Lefty loosey. There you go.
It's so easy. A 6th grader can do it.
Yeah, this is so easy. A 6th grader can do it. I mean, not a 6th grader.
Yeah.
A 6-year-old. A
6-year-old and a 1st grader.
A 1st grader. Yeah. So what you do is just back that thing out. It does have an O-ring on it.
Greg, I can't even see.
You good? There you go. It comes out. If they're real tight, what I do in a lot of cases, I got these are actually Craftsman screwdrivers, and they have a square shank on them. I will put an adjustable wrench on it and break it loose, and then you can screw it loose with your hand, as Riker's doing right here. So what you do here, once you get these backed out, he's struggling with it just a little bit.
Here, I need to get in the gap. Yeah.
There we go.
Get it in the gap.
Get it in the gap, he says. Look at that look of concentration. Okay, now we've got that out. What you do is stick a an Allen head in here. I'll have to get you the size on that, and you look for your timing mark in this hole. I'm gonna tilt this thing up just so we can see where it's at, but you'll really be able to tell what's going on with the head, or with the head off, the rocker arms off, and the cam exposed. So let me grab a Allen head and a flashlight, and we'll see if we can't get it to top dead center. Alright guys, I lost my videographer for a little bit, so I'm going to show you how to get this thing to top dead center. This takes a 6mm Allen head, and you rotate it counterclockwise. I believe that's right. Yes, counterclockwise. What you want to do is look in this hole here, and I can't get my light to work. Might need a new battery in that thing. There it goes. Okay. Let me see if I can drop this camera down so you might can see a little bit better. Alright, so what we got here is the, see if I can zoom in. Struggle with these every time. There is a notch you can barely see, like it almost is an arrow cast into the to the case right here on the top side, and you want to line that up on this. There's a shiny piece of metal down here. Rotate this thing around counterclockwise. Another thing you want to look for is on your cam, if you do have this open or the rocker arm covers off, you want to make sure the cam lobes, you see there's one lobe there and there's another lobe there, make sure those are facing down. So I know we can't be close to top dead center yet, so just keep rotating this thing around, and there's that, the last cam lobe is going down now, so we got to be getting close. This is going to be top dead center on the compression stroke. Alright guys, as you're rotating this thing around, you can actually see the notch in there pretty good. See if I can get it up to where you can see the actual words typed in there. I done went past it, so let me run this back around just to make sure I can get to where you guys can see. There again, you're watching for the valve or the cam lobes to be facing down, and what you'll see in this hole is you'll come across two tick marks, and I don't really know what they mean, but I know when you come across those two tick marks, you're getting close. Actually, that's them right there. You see the two tick marks? You're getting close to your next two marks you'll be looking for. The next one you come to, there's the tick mark, and it's kind of tough to see, but there's an F stamped in that. That's actually the flywheel. That's where it fires, and the next one will be the T mark right there. And you line, there's a little tick mark and then there's a T. You need to line that up, the tick mark up with the little notch that's there here, and that's where you're at top dead center. There you go. Finally I can actually get this in the camera. It's kind of like trying to video a unicorn. I can't ever seem to catch one, but you can see the tick mark and then the T that's at the top of the T's first, and then the bottom line comes below that, so it's kind of turned sideways. Alright, so that's how you get it to top dead center. And just to check that, there again, your cam lobes are down, and also this motor has a notch on the side of the cam gear here. You see the notch here and one notch here, and then there's also a little dent right above this bolt that signifies that that goes to the top. These two here should be lined up across your head, and that lets you know it's the top dead center. So that's how you set one to top dead center. Like I said, it really doesn't matter in this case because we're going to take it completely apart and put it back together. So but if you're just doing a top end on one, you'll want to set that top dead center. If you want to adjust the valves, that's how you do it. So that's how it goes. Alright, next item we're going to take apart here is I'm going to take this tensioner out, the cam chain tensioner, which is right here. It's got a 8mm head bolt. I like to break that loose. I've already broken it loose. Just makes it easier when you get ready to put it back together. And then there's two 8mm bolts here. Take them, remove them all the way, tap this with a hammer and it'll pop off. And a lot of times you can get enough slack in it to pull the cam chain off, and I'm hoping that's going to work in this case. If it doesn't get enough slack, you have to remove the bolts out of the cam gear here, slide that thing forward, and then the cam chain will come off. So let me get this removed, and I'll see if I can fish that chain off without removing the cam gear. Alright guys, we got the tensioner out. This thing's got a pretty good bit of slack in it. I'm going to see if I can fish this thing over the cam gear here. If this doesn't work, I may end up having to take that gear off. Just a little bit easier if it will come off like this and I don't have to take it off. That's just one less thing I got to remove. But I don't think it's going to work. I believe I'm going to have to, what you have to do is remove the one bolt. I don't have a regular ratchet here, so we're going to use this air ratchet without the air. Remove the one bolt first. You got to keep the motor from turning over. A lot of times I like to stick that 6mm head back into the timing hole. Actually, that's not going to work in this case. So let's try to hang on to it. That ain't. It's a little tough to get the brake loose. These things have some Loctite on them a lot of times, so they can be tough. I got it now. So we're gonna run that out. 10mm head. Then you'll have to rotate it around to get this one out as well. Can't get to both of the bolt holes with it at top dead center. So run this one out. Got to get it rotated around a little bit. Well, I done went past it, so you can't get that one out. Alright, let me break these things loose. Get them broke loose and then run these all the way out, then the chain will come right off. I'll cut the camera back on once I get ready to take the head bolts out to show you which bolts you need to loosen up and what tools you need to get those off with. Alright guys, I got the cam gear loose, completely removed the bolts, slid the chain off of the gear, and then you can lift up on the cam. Comes all out like that. You do want to make sure you put this gear back on there in the right orientation. Well, if you can remember from setting it at top dead center, the lobes need to be down. So when you put the gear back on, that little notch that's in the gear right there should go like this. So the notch is on top and the lobes are down. I might stick the bolts back in there just to keep it together. I did tie a piece of wire on here to keep it from falling down in there, and that'll help you if you have to rotate this thing around anymore. Keep your chain from getting bound up. Alright, now you need to take out the head bolts. This thing has got 14mm acorn bolts, 8mm Allen head. Looks like 3 of those 8mm and then 2 more 14mm over here. And you get those loose and it should pick the head up. We'll go ahead and run them off at the impact. I'll cut the camera back on right before I pop it off. Alright guys, I got all the bolts out. Now you can just take a hammer, tap up on this thing just a little bit. It actually don't take much. And it'll kind of wiggle off of there. Kind of lift it up straight so your studs don't get caught up on your gasket. And there you go. There's the head off of it. That one's pretty black in there. This thing wasn't smoking or anything. Cylinder don't really feel bad. I think the guy just wants to do some rings in it, so that's probably what we're going to do. Only other thing we need to take off to get this cylinder off is these 2 8mm headed bolts here on the bottom. They hold the bottom of the cylinder on, or that they hold the cylinder on, not the bottom of it. But I'm going to back those out, and then your cylinder should come right off. Sometimes they will get stuck. That base gasket with them getting so hot will make them stick. So pull those out, stick them in your cardboard. I don't even see where the holes are for those. So keep sliding these things up. It is going to have a cam chain guide that's going to come up too with it. We'll pry up on this just a little bit to get it to break loose from that gasket. Once it ever pops loose, it'll come up very easy. It's just breaking that 20-year-old seal. Actually, this thing might be older than 20 years old. There it goes. Got it broke loose now. wiggle it up, comes right off just like that. There you go, there's your cylinder. Got a little bit of dirt in it, but we're going to get all that cleaned up. So we're going to put this all back together pretty much just like it is, so I will clean all that up. Here's your piston, your your crankshaft. This one feels great. I usually grab it like this. Doesn't matter side to side motion. Well, it matters, but this one doesn't have, it's got some, but if you don't have any up and down motion, any whatsoever, you're good. So this one here doesn't have any play. I'm actually pulling up and down on it right now, no movement whatsoever. So this crank's good in this thing, which it didn't have any kind of knock or anything on it before, so kind of was hoping it was going to be good, and it is. Alright, I've already unbolted this starter earlier, and just stick a screwdriver in here at the front of it and you can kind of pry it back. Usually you have to take that front cover off to ease up a little bit of tension on the yeah, I'm gonna have to pull that cover off on the starter gears, but that's gonna be I guess that's not gonna be the next thing we take off. Next thing we take off is gonna be this clutch cover. So let me get this thing spun around to the side and get it up here where you can see it. We'll pull this clutch cover off of it. Cut the camera on in a sec. Alright guys, next thing we're gonna do is get this clutch cover off the side. First thing on this side is to remove the kickstart. I did make a mark here where the notch is, just so we could get it lined back up on the shaft in the same place. Really not crucial, but it helps a little bit just to make sure your shifter's back in the right place and it doesn't get hung up on your plastics when you do kick it. That's a 12mm bolt there. Sometimes they can be kind of tough to get off the actual shaft. This one's not bad at all. I pull right here on this side as I tap on this side, and it pulls it right off just like that. Alright, next thing we need to do is take this side cover. I'll cut the camera back on the side. Alright guys, got all the bolts out. These are all 8mm headed bolts. I had a couple over here that were already loose. They were holding wires that go to or cables that go to the reverse, as well as the reverse light and neutral light and all that stuff. What you want to do here is just take a hammer and tap this cover off. One thing you want to pay attention to is you tap this thing off, every so often you need to come and tap on this shaft here to knock it back in, because it's the kickstart, and it has this got a spring loaded shaft on it, and that thing will come off. It really doesn't hurt if it does come off, but it makes it a little easier if you just not let that spring fly off of there. So just keep tapping that shaft in. As you tap out on the cover, I'm actually holding it with my hand, and it's staying in place pretty well. So just keep tapping it like that. God, I forgot this thing had oil in it. I just poured oil all on the floor. But anyway, we'll deal with that in a second. Looks like my helper just showed back up. Oh goodness gracious. Well, we better chew that one up. There you go. Alright, so there's your cover. As you could hear, there was a washer that fell off. This washer here goes on the kickstart shaft. There's also a washer on this clutch lever here. And there's Riker over here stepping in the case that just stepped. Oh, are you okay? Is it alright? Just step in the cover right there. Of all places in this shop, he stepped right in there. Anyway, okay, so that's that. We're gonna pull these. Give me a Ziploc bag. We're gonna pull these pieces out of this clutch here off, and this nut here doesn't look like it's ever been. No, just a smaller one. Staked, but one time. This motor appears to have never been taken apart before, which is very good. Hey, along with that washer that came off of here, there's also an O-ring right here where the oil tube comes up. Make sure you hang on to that too. Sometimes those things get stuck in these covers, and sometimes they don't. So, alright, we'll start taking off a few of these parts just while I got it here. This piece, triangle shaped piece with the 3 balls in it, this whole arm here, we'll pull all that off, put it in a bag. We'll get the bearing and the bearing holder out of the change clutch here. Put those back together, try to at least, and stick them in here. I'm gonna pull this clutch arm off. On this clutch arm there is a notch, a little dent knocked in it. It needs to be lined back up when you go put it back together. I'll show you that, but it's on the side here. There's a little arrow, so just slide that thing off just like that. Stick that in your bag, and that's really about all I can take off right now. I'm gonna end up having to take this off anyway eventually, the kickstart, but I'll get the socket to get both of these nuts off, pull both clutches off, and then we'll be able to get in there to the oil pump, the cam chain, and all that stuff. So let me get the socket for these things, cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, I got these nuts loose. This one's actually reverse thread, so you have to tighten it up to get it to come off. These are 27 millimeters, both of them, this one and the other clutch. So they also have washers behind them right there. That one has outside stamped on it, so you make sure you put it back together, you get that right. This clutch here, the centrifugal clutches, I'm not going to say it's pressed on there, but you can't just pull it off. I see people online doing a bunch of different things with them, tapping them with hammers and all that. I like to just stick a 2-jaw puller on them, and my old 2-jaw here has seen its better days, so I kind of tighten it up by hand, and a lot of times you can just push down on it and it will actually pull the clutch off. They're not on there very strong at all, or like pressed on at all, or very hard at all. So if I can get this thing on here, pick up on it, and it'll sometimes pull off. Just because I got it on camera right here, it's probably not going to work. So let me hit it with the impact here and see if I can get it to pull off. It's coming now. I think it's about time to buy a new 2-jaw puller, because this one here, the darn shaft is wobbling so bad it won't hardly stay on the crankshaft. Yeah, there you go. So that's all it takes to pull it off. I usually keep all these together, the washer and the nut. Set that to the side. You have to take this guard off, 10 millimeter bolts. You have to take that off before you can remove the change clutch. So that actually holds the water pump on one of those bolts. So guys, you're gonna have to excuse the radio. This outside Riker is just rambling like crazy out there. Alright, so got that. Then you pull this off, same as the centrifugal clutch. Make sure this little shaft, or this little bushing, comes out with it, and set that in your box. I need to move these so I can get to them. You can't pull this other gear off until you move the oil pump. So with this guard off, there you go. Throw that in the box. Let me see if I can find the clutch guard. Find that in my cardboard. And then the next thing to do is take this oil tube off. There's a 10 millimeter bolt here, here, and here. And keep up with your O-ring up there on the top. And this one here is kind of a banjo bolt type deal. Got the hole in the middle of it. So that's that. Pull that off, and that will allow you to get the rest of the bolts for your oil pump. So there's that tube, and then another 10 here, 10 there, 10 there on the bottom, and that should be it for your oil pump. Stick them in the cardboard, and your oil pump will slide right off. Usually pulls this gear off with it because it's kind of wedged in there. There you go. Oil pump's off. Go ahead and pull this gear off. There's a washer on the back side of it. Make sure you hang on to that. And then there's your cam chain. I may end up putting a cam chain on this one. It was stretched a little bit. I'm probably going to do some rings on it too. So there's your oil pump. I'll stick that in a bag. There is an O-ring here. I'm going to take this off just because I'm not sure if this is going to be on the new crankcase that we're going to be replacing this thing with. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off, and I'll stick it with the oil pump. Alright, last order of business is getting this pulse or kickstart off. This is the one I told you about earlier that get a little squirrely on you when you try to remove it. I'll slide this kickstart back on there. What you want to do is try to get this notch down off of this little arm here and then slide it off, and the spring will sling loose in there. So pull it down like that, ease it to you, and then the spring will come off right there. Slide it on out. Main thing with this is you want to make sure you keep up with that washer. You can see the washer that fell down in here. Make sure you keep up with that washer. It goes on the inside there. That's the most aggravating thing about putting this all back together, is keeping up with that washer. So, alright, got that on. The only other thing on this side that we'll have to do is take this. This is the reverse cup. We'll take it off, and it's like a 5mm, I believe. Let me pull that off. I'll cut the camera back on in just a second. Alright guys, last thing is this Allen head 5mm. Pull that off. The little cup comes off. This other little piece, and I think these little pins will come out. And that one did. Can't get the other one out. There it goes. Alright, so pull all that out. I'm going to stick those in a bag because that'll be the first thing I'll lose. I'm also going to stick the oil pump and these collars right here for the oil pump. Stick them in a bag too, because I'll also probably lose them if I don't do something with them now. So wiggle those out, stick that in a bag with the oil pump, and should have everything off on this side. So the only other thing I am going to loosen or remove these 4 bolts right here on this 4-wheel drive coupler here, and then I'll jump to the other side. Alright guys, over here on this left side of this motor now, got all the clutches and stuff off the right side. So we're going to see about getting this drive shaft out. This is going to be just a little bit different if you have a 2-wheel drive bike, but this 4-wheel drive bike has this drive shaft here and this front drive unit. We've got to get all that stuff off of here. Start off with, we're going to take this side cover off that will expose the drive shaft. Alright, and that pulls right off. And this drive shaft, it's got 2 little snap rings on each side of it. You can take those out and slide them out. I think in this case I'm going to probably end up just taking these 12mm bolts out here that attach it to the crankcase and pull it out that way, just to keep from messing with those snap rings. So let me get that out. Let me get those loosened up, slide that part off, and then we can slide the shaft out. I'll cut the camera back on when I get ready to start taking these stator bolts off. Alright guys, got the 3 bolts out of here. They're actually kind of a odd looking bolt. I can't say I've ever seen one of these in a Honda before, but snazzy looking bolt there. But anyway, with those bolts loose and the cover removed, this drive shaft will slide right out of here with the cover on it. I'm not going to mess with that. We're just going to bolt that back onto the other case once we get ready to get all that back together. Now what we need to do is start working on getting this side cover off. First thing I'm going to do is pull this starter gear cover off here, and then we'll start taking these bolts out of this stator. There are 5 bolts here on this starter gear cover, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 9 around this outside of the cover, and I believe there's 1 bolt inside here if my memory serves me correct. So let me pull those off, cut the camera back on in a second. Alright guys, got all the bolts out of here. Actually, I need to stick these in my cardboard, but stick them in here. I just got it kind of mislabeled. It says left cover, which I guess this is the left cover. So anyway, stick these bolts in here so we can keep up with them, and makes it a whole lot easier putting it all back together. So pull these in. You want to when I pull the bolts out of here, it kind of one of the bolts was kind of hung, so it pulled the cover off partially too. This one bolt right here behind this drive shaft, it does have a washer on it, copper washer. Make sure you hang on to that. And well, I was about to say I got missing a hole here, but it's because I didn't pull all the bolts out. So got all the bolts stuck in here now, and the next thing we're going to do is pull this starter cover off the rest of the way. Go ahead and grab a bag because there's some gears and stuff in here we need to hang on to. So just pull the cover up off here like that. The first gear that you come to actually has a shaft that will come out with it as well. Stick both of those in your bag. This other gear comes out like that. It does have a washer on the end of it, so hang on to that washer. And then the only thing left in here is the starter. I think I removed the starter bolts on a prior step. Or maybe I didn't, or I know I did. So I don't know if I showed it or not, but pull your starter off. And then now we're left with pulling this cover off. See if I've got a little hammer over here to tap this thing off of here. I'll usually just tap here behind the... I'd mentioned that I thought there was a bolt behind here. There is not a bolt behind this starter cover here. I don't know what I was thinking about there. But tap that thing off. I think there's a pry point here somewhere. See, there's a couple of them on this case here. So we're going to pry up kind of easy. Try to kind of keep this thing coming off of here square. Makes it come off a little easier. And this is attached to the stator, so it is magnetized. And we did not remove the shifter, which you probably should have, but when you do pull it off like that, it pulls the whole shift shaft out with it, and there is a washer that you need to keep up with to go back on that shaft. This bike really don't look too bad. It's a little bit of crud in the bottom end, but it's not bad at all. So here we are with the flywheel here, shift drum, pretty much about all you can see from this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the socket. I think that's a 17mm, and the puller to get that flywheel off of there. So let me grab it. I'll cut the camera back on once I get it loosened up. Alright guys, got the bolt out of there. It was a 17mm, and that is normal right hand threads. So this is a puller. This is actually made by like Motion Pro. You pretty much need, this is one of the specialty tools that you do need to do this this type of work. That works for a lot of different Hondas, so if you got a buddy that's recently rebuilt his motor or something like that, you could probably borrow it from them, and more than likely it'll work on this thing because it fits 350s, 300s, 450, 500. And I'll go ahead and tell you that makes it a whole lot easier than trying to do a 3-jaw puller or trying to rig some way up to pull that off. That right there is well worth the money. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I just pulled the thing off while we were talking. So once you get that off, you just slide your gear off here. It ain't really wanting to come. I think it's hitting my... I don't really know what it's hitting. It's not hitting the keyway. There it goes. The gear, the little bearing here. Also a washer here on this crankshaft. Things can be kind of tough to get off sometimes because they get kind of stuck on there with the oil. So just pry up on it a little bit. Get it pull off. There's your washer. Here's your flywheel. Put these things back together. You have to, it's got a one-way bearing in there. You have to kind of rotate the flywheel a little bit to get it all slide back together. So we're gonna stick all those in our tote. And the next thing we're gonna do is pull this shift drum off. Make sure I hit the record button. Yes, I did. So pull the shift drum off. 10mm bolts. This is a little bit different design on this thing than a lot of the other Hondas. The way this shift drum works. It's been a while since I took one of these apart, so if I mess something up, I'm sorry. But just take the 2 bolts out, lift up on this shift drum and the center part will come up too, and you can kind of flip your retainer out at the same time. And this little half moon shaped piece here, if you grab around, see if I can show it on the camera, if you grab around on the side of it here, grab around like here, when you lift up on it, there's these little ears right here that are spring loaded. See, they move right there. Make sure you grab those things because they'll fly away and you might not ever find them. What I normally do is just take a zip tie around these things to hold it all together. Just so happens I got a zip tie laying right here. That was pure coincidence. And then the thing kind of slipped out too while I'm trying to get it all here. This is one of those cases where you need about 4 hands and you've got really like 1.5. So just stick your zip tie on there to hold it all together. Trust me, you'll thank me later. So zip tie this thing down and then stick it in a bag to try to keep together all those small parts. Alright, next thing to do is pull that bolt out of the center there. That is a 12mm. I think you have to use a deep well to get the shift, that star looking piece off, and it should slide right off. So let me grab a deep well 12. I'll pull that off, and probably gonna pull these little dowels out too. I guess I could go ahead and do that now. I think I got a ziplock. Here you go. So we got the ziplock bag here. We'll go ahead and stick our zip tied aggravating little piece back in there. Stick the washer. Bolts will go in the cardboard. And I thought I had a pair of needle nose, but I don't. So you got a sleeve, a bigger sleeve and a smaller sleeve, and then there's a little ear that it attaches to or pushes down on here on the bottom. And it's actually the part of the bearing retainer that's in there. So grab onto that. Same thing on the other side, same exact setup. 2 sleeves and a bearing retainer. Alright, put all that in your bag. We'll get that 12mm bolt off, stick it in the bag, and then we'll flip it over to the other side and start taking the bolts out to get this crankcase apart. Guys, I was thinking most of the bolts were on the other side, but they're actually on this left side. So go around and take all these 8mm bolts off, pretty much every one you can see around here. You don't have to mess with taking this output shaft off yet, because there's still some gears that are attached in the transmission. You actually do not want to take this off now because the gears will fall off and you'll have a mess. So get all these bolts out, flip the thing over, a couple more bolts on the other side, and then we'll be able to break the crankcase apart. So let me get all these bolts out. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, over here on the right side now, got all those bolts out on the left side. The only bolt over here you have to take out is one right down in this area here. It's below, I believe that's a motor mount, or right above a motor mount, I'm sorry. One bolt that holds that right side together. And if you got everything taken out, which I think I have, this thing should pry apart. I can't remember on this one if it's got some pry points on it. I don't really see any right off the top of my head here, so we'll just take the hammer and tap it here where our starter was attached. See if we can get it to pop loose. Let me stand it up a little bit. I think there might be a little bit of a hole here at the front that I might could catch on to and pry out. Nope, ain't catching there. So this thing ain't been apart in a right good many years, so it's gonna be maybe a little bit tougher to get apart than some of the others. There's a little bit of a pry point here by this mount for the front drive shaft. Still not wanting to come out there. There we go. Took and hit this this side here by where the rear motor mount is. Take a pretty good lick to knock it to where it starts breaking that gasket loose. And once that, it actually makes a different noise, but once that gasket starts coming loose, you should be able to get a screwdriver in there. You don't want to pry real hard on this thing because you'll end up breaking the case, but it doesn't really matter in our case because we've got another one. But just work your way around it with some small screwdrivers, just prying just a little as you go to keep from tearing anything up any more than it's already torn up. Normally what the issue you have here is the bearings that are in the transmission shafts and the bearings that are on the crankshaft are kind of, I won't say pressed in there, but they're kind of wedged in there. So they're usually the tougher ones to get out. Stick the screwdriver in there, and like I said, just keep prying your way around, and it should pop. Should pop loose. The biggest thing is to try to get it square. Like you saw it move just a lot right there. So that means the back end got about the same place the front end was, and it started coming off a little more even. So you want to make sure these shafts, they all should stay in the bottom end. You want to try to keep it like that. That makes sure all your transmission gears don't fall all apart when you do get it out, because I'm not planning on taking the transmission apart on this thing. So if you can keep the gears together, that's just one less step you have to do. There you go. The shift shaft actually came out. Probably could have left that stuff on that other side of it, and it would have held everything in there, but then you'd have to flip it over and unbolt that at some point in time anyway. So it didn't really matter if it came out now or we had to move it around to get it to come out later. So there's our shift shaft, our shift drum, I'm sorry, that's the drum. Alright guys, next thing we need to pull out is this shaft here that holds all of the shift forks. You can kind of just slide it out till it comes out of that bottom case down there, and then slide it all off at one time with the shift forks on it. That's supposedly what you can do. No, it'll work. My fingers are just too fat. There we go. Okay, so just to look at these shift forks, just to make sure you know how they go back in there. There's one on the bottom side, which was actually how the motor sit in there, would be on the left side. So you got an L on that one, a C on the center one, and an R on this top one here, which would be the, sorry, L, C, C, R. And that's how they go in there, right side, center, and the left. Right side naturally is the one we removed over here. So next thing we need to do is pull this reverse gear out. You can kind of lift up on this gear, the big gear here. There is a washer on there too, so make sure you hang on to that. And then this reverse gear will come right out just like that. Put that gear back on there. So I usually stick these things in a box with a rag just so I can keep up with everything, and so that maybe they won't move around. Just so happens in this case we're going to put this back together pretty quick, so it shouldn't take long. Also, that reverse shaft, don't know if you noticed or not, it does have a washer on it. This one here has a washer. None of the other ones here have washers on them. Alright, so next thing we need to do, I believe the way this thing has got to work is we have to take every gear off of this shaft here, because this is the shaft that's on that output shaft back there. So we got to take every gear off of here in order to pull that shaft out, because the shaft comes out the other side. So we'll start by pulling some of these things off. Washer, little spacer, then the gear. What I'm trying to do is get down far enough that I can get this shaft out. So I'm just going to pull these up as a chunk all together. This is where it gets real crucial that you keep everything together, because you don't want to have to go back and figure out how this stuff goes back in. And as I work my way down on this transmission, I'm going to ease this longer shaft out of here. Actually, I think it might come all the way out now. Yep, there we go. That one's out. It does have a washer on the back side, so grab that washer. I got to sit these other gears down because I can't do all this with one hand. So sit that one down. Grab this washer out of here. Stick it back on here. Slide it on there like that. Stick it in the box. And then get these last remaining gears out of here. There again, they all just slide off. Just like that. There's a spacer. I left 2 gears and a spacer on there. I think there might be 2 spacers. 2 gears and a spacer is all we got. So there we go. So this, make sure you flip it over and stick it on the other gears that are laying here on the floor. And I think what I'm going to do is grab me a couple zip ties and zip tie all that stuff together, just so I can make sure it doesn't go anywhere and all stays together. So with all that done, the last thing we need to do is pull this output shaft off. The bearing here, you can see it where it kind of fell out. This is off of the shift drum. And I've got another case for this because I don't know if I told y'all or not, but this is the motor that had the drain plug stripped out. Everything else is good with the motor, but the owner just couldn't get it to quit leaking. So this is really the only way to truly fix a strip drain bolt is change the case. So take these 3 12mm bolts out. You make sure you put the socket down on there before you hit the button, because otherwise it'll just spin right on the top. That one there's kind of tight. We're going to have to drop back and pull on that one because this ain't going to break it loose. Let me grab a ratchet and an extension. Break that loose and I'll cut the camera back on right before I slide it out. Alright guys, got all the bolts out of there. This thing should just kind of pop off here. I'm going to take a hammer and tap it. Tap it kind of lightly. Well, like I said, it should slide right off there. It's not. Taking this brass hammer and tapping the end of the shaft. It does have an O-ring in there that's kind of holding it, but that's all it takes to get it off. Little O-ring right there, and then this is where all your gears go on here. I've had people try to change these out because really this and that side cover is the only, this and the side cover is the only difference in the 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive bikes. But the 2-wheel drive ones do not have this shaft coming out the front, and that's what drives the front tires. Well, I've had people pull these off before thinking that they could just swap this out, but when you pull this off, you can imagine what happens to all that pile of gears over here. That pile of gears right there, they just fall all apart. So don't do that. This is how you have to do it if you want to make a 2-wheel drive bike a 4-wheel drive, which I've done that before. So now we're just going to get this thing cleaned up. I do need to knock the crankshaft out of this because we are going to reuse the crank. And I don't know, I got to look through that other crankcase I got because I bought a crankcase on eBay to put all this back together with. So let me see what all I got to take off of here to put on there. But that's pretty much it on the removal. I'm just going to take a dead blow hammer and knock that out. You can do it in a press, but it takes me longer to get the press rigged up to press that out than it does to knock it out with a dead blow. So that's it on my 300 disassembly. I hope you guys like my video. Like, subscribe, check out my other videos. And I'm going to have a few more on this one. We're going to put this thing back together, so I'll have another video for that, the reassembly. Also doing a 60% gear reduction in this thing. So I'm probably going to do a video on that. Kind of try to separate that out to where it's just one video on the gear reduction, but I'll leave it in the assembly video too, just because if I don't include how to put the clutch basket on, then you can't figure out how to put the whole bike back together. But anyway, like I say, like, subscribe. Y'all have a good night.